You're listening to Prime Sports Tennis with Andrea Leanne on the Prime Sports Radio Network. And on today's show, can you hear that boom? That's the state of tennis in France, letting you know that they're coming on strong after capturing the Davis Cup title over Belgium. Did French captain Yannick Noah make some risky selections? He sure did. Did it ultimately pay off? You betcha. We'll analyze. We'll also update the latest on Vika Azarenka's custody battle, John Isner's tying the knot, and Serena's Gatorade commercial, and much more, including Andrea answering your Facebook questions as Prime Sports Tennis starts now. Is in bloom, the transmissions was you. Now try to keep us all down. All right, it's Tuesday, the 28th of November, 2017. Thanks for tuning in to Prime Sports Tennis with lead tennis analyst and former top 15 player in the world, Andrea Leanne. So, Andrea, the Davis Cup is the last big event of the season, and it was an exciting one. France making a statement. What'd you think about the Davis Cup this year?
It was fireworks. This one we thought we had enough fireworks all year. We get a huge dose to end 2017, the final event, the Davis Cup. The French team hadn't seen a title in 16 years, a big drought there. But Yannick Noah, the captain, led them through, made some risky decisions, but the reward paid off, and they pulled through with a 3-2 win over Belgium. And it was unbelievable. And when I say fireworks, there were fireworks in the ceremony, the celebratory ceremony at the end there, Greg. I mean, you should have seen these guys. There was nothing. I mean, we've had some great events this year, Greg. We've had the Labor Cup. We've had Fed Cup. We've had the Grand Slams. We've had so many incredible moments this year. But there were these French guys, arms around each other, singing the national anthem, the crowd with them, the streamers coming down, the trophies in hand. You just could not have asked for a bigger or better moment in tennis to end 2017. So it was phenomenal. Yannick Noah, of course, the charismatic world champion himself. He had won the Davis Cup a couple of times before, 91 and 96, but it had been such a drought, and the French guys were getting so down, and they really thought they were never going to be able to push through, but they did. And it was tough. Let me tell you, the tennis itself was not the star. It was the decisions behind the scenes. The team Yannick Noah finally went with to put Richard Gasquet on the team instead of Mahut, the incredible doubles forte of Mahut and Herbert, one of the top teams in the world for the last 3 years. But he took Mahut off the team. He put Gasquet on because they needed another singles player. Pouille was not 100%. He wasn't sure if Pouille would be able to finish his matches, and so he had to have another singles player on there, and he put Gasquet, and it all paid off.
Well, that's what you got to do, though. Sometimes it's not the straight line decisions that win you championships, and you got to have some guts. You got to make some decisions that are, you just got that feeling, that feeling in your gut. That's why they call it gutsy. And so, look, it's great. Also, not only did the U.S. win the Fed Cup for the first time in all these years, but France wins the Davis Cup so this is really good. You want to see? We talked about parity all season. We got parity in the Davis Cup and Fed Cup too.
Well, absolutely. As you mentioned, the U.S. finally coming through in a 17-year drought to win the Fed Cup title, Coco Vandeweghe leading the way there. But it was interesting because, of course, Gasquet is an incredible singles player. He's a veteran. He's played Davis Cup for probably decades now, and we thought he would probably play the singles. He probably would substitute for Pouille in that last day. In fact, he played the doubles, and they came through. France won that doubles in 4 sets. Herbert and Gasquet won it. And then, of course, we put those reverse singles on the last day, and Tsonga had to play Goffin in the first one. Goffin, who's 6-0 in Davis Cup singles this year, was invincible. He went right through Tsonga, no problem there. Held to form, even though he had a little bit of a nagging knee injury after getting to the finals of the ATP in London. But he was in fine form, went through Tsonga, so that left that final deciding rubber, Greg. And you had Pouille, the 23-year-old, being given the call by Yannick Noah over Gasquet to play Steve Darcis, who had already played a number of these deciders in these Davis Cup matches, had the experience, was 5-0. And instead, Pouille had lost his only 2 matches he had played in Davis Cup in the singles, including, of course, the one on opening day, and had never played the decider. So no experience, but he was playing in his hometown of Lille, and he had the hometown crowd support and pressure, quite frankly. And I have to say, Greg, he came through. Whatever vibe Yannick Noah had, proved to be the correct one because Puig just dominated, just totally outplayed Darcis, who was, some people say may have been a little bit injured, but it was a blowout. And boy, Greg, the scene when Puig won that last point and went over onto the court and the guys piled on top of him. It was like a World Series, the World Series victory moment, and they were all on top of them. I've never seen such incredible joy from these guys. And let me tell you, this is what Davis Cup means. And it was there in one fell swoop. There is nothing that compares with it. When you win the team for your country, of course, the French Federation president was there. He's beaming. This is just absolutely resurrected French tennis. He bemoaned at the beginning of the year he had no one in the top 10. He didn't have a Davis Cup victory. And now, of course, at the end of 2017, he's got Milanovic and Caroline Garcia, who've been in the top 10 now. And, of course, now he's got the Davis Cup title. So it's been really an incredible year for French tennis.
Yeah, we when we went over the start of the season for Davis Cup, we talked about how no team had more depth than France, and in a Davis Cup format situation all year, you don't know with injuries, schedules, depth is going to win out, and their depth proved it, and it paid off, and they got the big win. So.
Well, and you're absolutely right, because they could have fielded 3 teams. This is without Monfils, without Simon. I mean, they had so many guys they didn't have to call upon. So it just, as you said, shows the depth, shows the experience, quite frankly. I mean, when you have guys like Tsonga on there and Gasquet on there who have the experience, Mahut and Herbert, world champions. So they had plenty of ammunition, but for it to be Puig to be the one to have to come through was that special moment, that intangible you could not have predicted. And that is what Davis Cup is all about. It's all these things that come together that you would not have anticipated that make it such a special moment.
Who's the most talented player for France?
Yannick Noah.
Yeah.
I would go with Yannick Noah. I think he is the most talented, quite frankly. I mean, obviously he's retired and he was a Grand Slam champion and so forth. But I think he is. I think it was his passion and his intelligence and his vibe about knowing his players and coming back on board as the captain that really rejuvenated these guys and made them very, very tunnel visioned and wanting to get this title this year. Yes, a lot of the top guys didn't play. We should put that out there. But still, the teams were strong. You had a strong U.S. team. You had a strong Australian team. And they had to beat these guys to get there. Mm-hmm. And so I give them a lot of credit. But as far as the talent, they're so different, Greg. I mean, Tsonga is the big hitter, the talented, athletic, big guy who's always in the final rounds of these events and always been a top tenner. Lots of experience. Gasquet as well, so talented. I mean, the backhand, the flourish, everything about him. But then you have Puig, who will actually be practicing with Roger Federer in the off-season now. He goes back to Dubai. He is going to be one of the practice partners with Roger Federer. And he is just such a gritty baseliner. But he showed a lot of power, and he showed a lot of weapons in this last match. He was able to really dominate Darcis with big ground game. And so I think that they all have their different pluses and minuses, a lot of different types of mental approaches and physical ones. But I think that's what makes the French team so interesting. They're just a cast of characters. And we're not even talking about Monfils and Simon, who are different players in their own right. So it's a lot of different personalities to manage, and I think only a guy like Yannick Noah could really do that.
Do they have like a next-gen type of player where you can go, yeah, you know what, I think that guy, he's got the best chance maybe a couple of years down the road of being really good?
Well, Puig's 23. He's ranked 18. He's obviously been to the quarters of the U.S. Open. He's had his big wins. He's had some really bright moments in the last couple of years, especially. So I would consider him not next gen because he's not 21 and under, but he's certainly the next guard. He's part of that Kyrgios, Sock, group. And although he hasn't really broken into the top 10 yet, I think he will. I think this is going to give him enormous confidence, by the way, going into 2018, that he was able to come through for the team in such a big moment. I mean, can you imagine the pressure on this guy, 23 years old, never played the deciding rubber in the Davis Cup? I mean, the people, the packed stands,
Yeah,
the
sure.
pressure. It was just an incredible moment for him to come through, and I think this is really going to help him. It would not surprise me if we see him in a quarterfinal of a Grand Slam very soon and into that top 10.
And even though he lost, his country lost, his team lost, David Goffin, after what he did, as you mentioned, at the ATP Finals, I mean, you couldn't ask him to do anything else because we weren't really sure, was he going to be able to carry that momentum, the confidence, the play into Davis Cup final the next week, or was he going to be so worn out that he just wasn't mentally or physically going to have it? And boy, he came with it, and that's a great sign.
And let's say what a leader he's been for this team. He has single-handedly gotten them to the final. He, as I mentioned, was 6-0 in singles. He beat Kyrgios, beat Pouille, beat Tsonga. Only lost 2 sets in the entire trail to the final, and only had a serve broken 9 times. So it shows what a force he is becoming. He's ranked number 7 in the world, as we mentioned. He took a huge leap after that French Open injury to the ankle where it kept him out of Wimbledon, but he rebounded so well this fall, made the finals in London, and of course getting to losing to Dimitrov in the final there boosted him to number 7 in the world. So this is a guy, even though he's not a big, powerful guy. I mean, can you imagine you put him against Tsonga? They have such different physicality, physiques, because, I mean, Tsonga is so big and so strong and sturdy and tall. He's just a big guy. And then you have Goffin, who looks so small next to him, like a David and Goliath. And it's David Goffin. And he's so slight, and he seems, so meager compared to them. But in fact, he can generate pace. He has such technically perfect strokes, the rhythm, the range, the whole entire technique of how he contacts the ball, creates the pace that he needs to hit the winners he did against Tsonga. And also the serves. I mean, he can hit aces. He can play an all-court game. He's got all the shots, the slices, the dices, and he can hit through it. So this is a very complete player, and he's a very smart player. And he's also one who runs under the radar, like a Stan Wawrinka in some ways. You don't hear a lot about him. He's very quiet. He doesn't ask for a lot of attention, but he is very, very lethal on court. He doesn't say much. He keeps, very, very to himself, but I think that that makes him tougher to read for these guys on court. I think they don't always know how to read what Goffin is going to do. And when you see Goffin beating Nadal and Federer in the ATP Finals, as he did the week before, and then come into Davis Cup with a nagging knee injury and still able to guts out the 2 singles that they had to have, it just shows also what an incredible, gritty performer he is.
All right, so Davis Cup pretty much puts an end to the big events to 2017 in the coming.
And we also have to give a shout out to Dave Haggerty, ITF. I mean, let me tell you, they've taken a lot this year about Davis Cup, and of course, Judy Murray also just today said it needs to be every 2 years. So there's still a continuing conversation about the Davis Cup format and how it needs to be rejuvenated. And Dave Haggerty is obviously, head of the ITF trying to do that. But boy, it was so great to see him give the French team their trophy, and those streamers come down and the music go off, and I mean the balloons and everything and the fireworks, because this is a big moment also for the ITF. The Davis Cup was also a big winner.
All right, let's see. We've got a few other things we wanted to go through here. Vika Azarenka, her saga continues. Custody tension builds. What's going on there?
Well, of course, her coach, Michael Joyce, has just announced, we knew this was coming a couple weeks ago. He's been in play as a coach now for a couple weeks. He may end up with contract, but he did formally announce that he is parting with Vika. He has stayed on board, even though she hasn't been able to compete because of this ongoing custody case in Los Angeles over her son, 11-month-old son, Leo, with the father of the child. And she is not allowed to take Leo out of the state of California. Neither parent is. So she has not been able to compete, but Michael Joyce has been very loyal. Of course, he's getting paid to stand by that contract, that year contract, which he did, and he was out in LA quite a bit trying to train with her in the hopes that eventually she would be able to come back. And this was supposed to be, of course, decided upon last month in October, but it's still going on. It's gotten complicated, Greg. So Michael Joyce, though, has decided that it's time for him to move on. He's in demand. Joe Conta apparently has expressed desire. She obviously is looking for a coach after splitting with Wim Fissette, who's now with Kerber. I told you it becomes a little bit of a game with these coaches and players at the end of the year and the splits and the new partnerships. But I think we'll see Michael Joyce out there pretty quickly. And, of course, the big question is, where does this leave Vika? Even though she has entered Auckland, the very first tournament of the year on the WTA Tour, I just don't understand the logic in that, because I cannot imagine her being able to play until this custody case is resolved. And, look, Greg, it's tough. I mean, the family, the father of the child's family put out a family picture. It looked like a Thanksgiving-ish looking picture with son Leo, with the father and his family and the son. And that had to really upset Vika. I mean, to see this whole family embrace his child in a very loving kind of family way is probably tough for her. And she did respond on social media, on Twitter, in a little bit of a blast at the at certain family members. And this is where someone has got to step in and say, Vika, that's it. No more social media. You've got to get off the social media. You're too emotional. This is too tough right now, and it's too difficult. You got to stop the social media. Just pull the plug on it and get this resolved, and not really add fuel to the fire. But, as we look at the actual schedule, Greg, I don't see, even if she plays Auckland and goes back to California, and just decides, okay, I'm going to take the week and go to play one tournament and come back and be with my son. She'd have to go back the next week to play the Australian if, in fact, she wanted to play the Grand Slam. Logistically, this seems really difficult, and that's to say that she would leave her son and go play a tournament, which I seriously doubt she will do. So even though we have had many, many questions coming in because it was announced that she did enter Auckland, I think that's a technical move, really, and that she has to be entered. If something should happen and they do resolve this and she is able to play, she has to be entered in the tournament to play it. So to me, that was just covering the base. But I would not put a lot of stock into seeing her play at the beginning of this year.
From what you've read about this specific case, is there something that kind of sticks out to you at all as far as what makes this different? Or is this just your typical...
Well, you have two parents who very much want to be with this child. I mean, they love this child, and you have a father and a mother who both want to have their baby. So I think that you have an ongoing custody case here of a lot of emotions, and as these custody cases can do, this is nothing new. It happens all the time, nothing different. And of course, yes, Vika is from Belarus, and this child is American. He's an American citizen. So, there's some discrepancy over the fact, what they did when they went to Belarus. Did they have a dual citizenship? I don't know all the details, but this is being tried in Los Angeles. That I do know, and with an L.A. judge. And so it's up to this L.A. judge to make the ruling, and that's where Vika needs to understand. So it would be... It really would be unusual, I think, to expect that Vika's going to be able to take this child for multiple weeks in a row on the tour. And if you play Auckland in the Australian Open, you're looking at probably 5 to 6 weeks, given the fact that Vika Azarenka is a top player and is usually in these events to the final, in the final stages of the tournament. So I seriously cannot fathom the fact that she would be able to take this child for 6 weeks in a row on her own tour. So. The logistics of this whole thing, Greg, still need to be mapped out, and I think it will be unlikely to see her do all that. I hope it does. I hope everything gets resolved. I hope everything works out, because we would love to see Vika back, and our hearts go out to her. This is obviously a really tough time, but it's one of these things where you just have to go through the process.
Yeah, I think you hit it when you talked about the extended time, because that's unusual. Is to have like you said, this happens all the time, but to have one side to go away for 4 or 6 weeks at a time, that's a long time to be without your child. So yeah, it's unusual. You would hope
the pro tennis tour is not your daily desk job where you can get up and go to work from 9 to 5 and go home. This is a career that requires global traveling, and of course when you're Vika Azarenka, there's a lot that goes with it. So it's complicated, and I hope they work it out. I hope they do. Obviously, it's what is in the best interest of the child, and I think that that's what the judge is looking at, what's in the best interest of the child, and I think that Vika hopefully will get on board and get this resolved.
All right. By the way, Maria's...
But get off social media. We don't want to hear it. We already know it, Vika. We know it. We're with you.
Yeah.
Go on. Move on.
Yeah. I don't... And the courts don't like that either. All right, so Maria is going to be playing in an exhibition in Turkey. Is that going to be the next time we're going
Maria
to see her?
was in Turkey, and
She
boy, was
was.
it a star-studded crowd in Turkey. Boy, oh boy. They haven't had a major event. They've had a smaller event there. Paul McNamee is tournament director there and now in Turkey, bringing in events there, doing a great job. But this was an exhibition, and boy, you would never have known it. Maria went out there. I've never seen such a huge crowd. And, first she's with Monica Puig in Puerto Rico, handing out aid and water and food to people who needed it during that crisis, and teaming up with Monica, which was very nice to see. It's great to see Maria giving back, and now she's been doing a lot of traveling, as she always does, and always a seasoned traveler, looking very dapper in her different outfits. But yeah, she was in Turkey. She played well. She's back. And I think that this is going to be the balance, though, with Maria. She loves the off court. She does a lot of things off court. She generates a lot of business off court. So I think that for her going forward, it's going to be how does she balance that with the tennis. She is ranked number 60 in the world. She will end this year at number 60, probably not where she wants to be. But the good news is the WTA has just issued a new rule, Greg, where those who are Grand Slam champions and former number ones can have the wild cards into the premier mandatories and premier events. It's not just the top 20 anymore. So Maria will get whatever wild card she needs. Hopefully she will get her ranking up a bit so we won't have to discuss that anymore.
Yeah, that's a 2017 topic. Okay, boy, I think this has been the year of getting married and having kids. John Isner's next, right? John Isner getting married?
John Isner's getting married. Stevie Johnson will be getting married. Of course, Anna Ivanovic is now pregnant. Very excited for her. She's living in Chicago with her star husband, Bastian, and they're there, and they're expecting their first child. This was, of course, rumored a couple months ago, but it's very, very good news for Anna. She's so popular. Everyone absolutely adores her. And it was great news coming off the heels of the fact where we also had this week Yana Novotna's funeral in the Czech Republic. Petra Kvitova spoke, talked about her heart, her fight. Helena Sukova, who she plays a lot of doubles with, a good friend of hers, also spoke, as did a lot of other notaries in the Czech Republic. A very hugely attended funeral, 300 people, because she's so well respected. And it's gotten it's gotten a lot of response. It's amazing, not a lot of people knew she was ill, apparently. And so it was a big surprise, and the response is still pouring out because so many people had such regard for her.
All right. Now we want to also remind everybody that if you haven't already seen it, I know you've seen it, Serena Williams and her commercial, her
Gatorade commercial. We do have a Serena update, yes. And let me tell you, these commercials Gatorade is putting out with Serena are so phenomenal. I mean, I almost think it's like a short movie. They are so well done, and Serena is so good. I mean, the way she speaks, she and Maria must have the same vocal coach. Their voice intonation is so well done on these different types of media. But Serena was phenomenal. Of course, now she had a baby double in it. We thought it was Olympia, but it was a baby double. But it did not matter. It was the message that Gatorade generated with Serena in really inspiring women to play more, and how sports strengthens you physically and mentally, and the allies you create and the bonds that you create. And it was so well done. And I encourage anyone to go out. It's right on our Facebook page. We put it out there. It's also on Serena's Twitter. And it just is phenomenal. I love these ads with Serena and Gatorade. And quite frankly, this is the message that she is setting that's so popular and so helpful to young girls out there, teaching them to be strong, teaching them to, really go for what they wanted to do. They may not win, they may lose, but it doesn't matter. You have to keep playing. And I love messages like that, Greg. And speaking of keep playing, Serena is playing. She got married, as we mentioned, and that had to take off a little time to go to New Orleans and get married. And it was phenomenal. But, of course, her coach, Patrick Mouratoglou, has come out today and said he's not sure if she's going to play the Australian.
Oh.
I think she is. I think she will play the Australian. Yeah. He's not with her in Florida yet. He has not seen her. I have, actually. And I think that she will play. I think that she is really looking forward to these two Grand Slams. She has changed her hitting partner. Right now, it's Jameer Jackson, who is the brother of Jermaine Jackson, who is Venus's hitting partner. And Jameer, I know. I've watched him. I remember going to a couple of exhibitions when he was a junior, and he's a great, great guy. He's a phenomenal hitter, American. And he will be terrific with Serena. He's got a really good vibe to him. He's got great dynamic, and I think that will be a welcome addition to her team. Also, of course, Mackie Shillstone, who's her coach, her fitness coach, is still with her, getting her into shape. I think she looks phenomenal. I mean, absolutely. I've never seen her so svelte and cut and defined. So I think that she's getting there. But of course, look, Greg, if she has an injury, she shouldn't play. But if she is fine physically, I do not see any reason in the world she will not play the Australian, because that is one of the Grand Slams where she has the best chance to win. And I don't see her waiting until the French Open. Of course, as we mentioned, playing the WTA Tour events is great, but that's not what she's after at this point.
Oh, yeah.
She's after those 2 Grand Slam titles to break that record, Margaret Court's record. So I don't see her waiting because the French will probably be her least likely one to win. And, of course, Wimbledon, obviously the most popular one for her to win. That's where she's had all her success. But I would put my money on her playing.
Yeah, you would think that the only thing that could prevent her would be some sort of an injury. I mean, she's never been through this before. Getting ready after giving birth.
Well, she's never been through a pregnancy before either, so that was a question mark too. How her body will respond. It was a difficult pregnancy in the very end, and so she did have to, wait and be patient and wait for her body to bounce back. Yes, she does look good, but there's one thing in looking good and another thing in feeling where you can play top flight professional tennis, and that's a whole different story. I don't think she's going to outrun anyone. I think that just her natural speed is better than most. But she's going to have the power and the physicality back, and that strength of body is going to be what's going to be important for her. Mentally, she's always there. We always know she's the fighter. But, I think that actually some strategy may come into play in the fact that all these other names who we've been talking about all year, like Ostapenko, Halep, Kvitova, Wozniacki, who have come up now, Garcia, Milanovic, are a little bit more confident and have a little bit more feeling that they can win as well. So she's going to have more to battle this time. But I do believe she will play the Australian.
Would you think it would be more surprising, based on what Serena would have to come back from, more surprising for Serena to win the Australian Open this year or Roger winning it last year? Or this?
Someone asked me, do I think it's more surprising for Serena to win it a year after having a baby or to win it while she was 8 weeks pregnant? I don't know what was more difficult, winning it 8 weeks pregnant or trying to win it now.
I would say now.
I think that there's no pressure on Serena, quite in my opinion.
I don't know. Pressure,
She's proven everything. She is going to break this record, whether she does win the Australian. It doesn't, to me, matter. I think she's just got to get the wheels in motion, though. If she's physically okay, she should go for it. She has nothing to lose, absolutely nothing to lose. No one's expecting anything. She's been out for a year, basically. She's had this beautiful baby and had a great wedding. So, she's had a lot to do. So, to me, she has nothing to lose. She can go out there and just play free as she needs to. Whereas Roger's got pressure on him, Greg. Roger's defending. He's the defending champion. Yes, Serena's the defending champion, but it's a little different. Roger's the defending champion. They have Novak will be back. Andy, I think, will be back. Kei Nishikori probably will not be, by the way. He dislocated some sort of tendon in that wrist. It ended up being a much more severe wrist injury than we first anticipated. So we're not expecting him to be back. But Stan Wawrinka will be back and a host of other guys who are out. And I think that, with the pressure on Roger and the fact he took a loss to Goffin, ATP Finals, he's taken a couple losses here and there, showed a little bit of vulnerability at the Canadian, at the U.S. Open. I think that they do see him with an Achilles heel. But again, it's going to be up to what kind of physicality Roger's in. And we know he's in Dubai. We know he's going to be practicing with Pui and Dokopolov and the young Canadian Felix Agaraslami. I'm sorry, Agaraslami. We're going to say that a few times. It's not actually as easy as Shapovalov.
No, the Shapovalov one is easier.
He's going to be practicing with those guys down there and getting ready, and he's going to stick to the same schedule. I'm told he's going to play Hotman Cup and then go into Melbourne. So It'll be interesting.
All right, yeah. I mean, look, there's going to be so many storylines, no question about it, and we're going to preview the the season coming up in a few, actually probably in about another 3 or 4 weeks. So keep that in mind. We've got our end of the season award show coming up in a couple of weeks, and then of course we'll preview the 2018 season after that. So we've still got a few more shows to go, and still a little bit more to go on this show because we've got our Facebook question time, Q&A time. Andrea answers your weekly questions, and we've selected 3 more for this week's show. We're going to start first of all with Tomas from Hungary. And Tomas wants to know, which new rule change do you like the most and least, and which do you think will be used this season?
Well, the Grand Slam Committee, has come out with their new changes for 2018-2019. The first is we're not going to have to worry too much about guys going out there injured and only playing half-heartedly to get their first-round prize money. The Grand Slams have said now to these guys, if you pull out after 12 o'clock on Thursday, obviously then a lucky loser would have to go in, that we'll give you 50% of your prize money if you don't go out. If you pull out, let a lucky loser who is 100% go in and really be able to play the match. We'll give you 50% of the prize money. I think that's a great idea. But if you do go on court and you are injured, just to take the full prize money, you're going to get deeply penalized. Now, obviously, this is subjective, Greg, and in determining how well someone plays on court. But they're sending a news flash out there to the players: don't come on court and quit after a set. You're not going to get away with that. I think it's also great that they're going to have a shot clock at 25 seconds. They're going to not allow players to walk onto court, then leave court for a long time, then come back. They have 1 minute once they walk on court to do the warm-up, and then they have 1 minute before they have to get ready to play. And so they're going to keep to this, and I think that will keep the pace and the momentum of the matches going so you can keep your audience, especially your television audience. You cannot have these delays anymore. You cannot have these long injury timeouts and these long delays. You lose your fans. So that's a great one, the shot clock. And of course, they're mentioning in 2019 the biggest change is that they're going to reduce the seeds from 32 to 16. This is the most controversial one with a lot of people. I'm surprised Roger Federer came out in support of this because I think it actually hurts the top players a little bit more. When they had the 32 seeds, it sanitized the draw to me. It made sure that the top guys don't have to face another relatively top player until the third round. Now, when you just have 16 seeds, the number 17th player in the world could be playing the top seed in the first round. So it makes it much more exciting in the first week, a lot more unpredictable, a lot more surprises and tougher matches for the top guys, perhaps. But that's what they want to do. They want to go back to that in 2019. So I think basically all the changes are pretty good to me. Of course, the one I don't particularly care for is the on-court coaching in the WTA Tour. And I understand the premise, and I support that. And I understand Steve Simon supporting the on-court coaching because it does add an element for the fan. It does add an element for the television audience to be able to eavesdrop on these usually private conversations. Can you imagine a professional conversation between a client and a professional out there, a coach and a player being publicized? I mean, usually these are so confidential. So everyone just seems to love that. They love to be able to drop in on those things and hear the secrets. But I don't like it for 2 reasons. I'm going to say this as a player. First of all, I don't think it makes the players look very good. Overall, it just doesn't. The overall response to me has been that it makes the players in the peak of competition, the heat of battle, and somewhat emotional, just not really look too positive. And so and I think sometimes the situations have been really difficult to listen to, and we've mentioned a few during the year. But I actually went back, Greg, and took a little bit of a survey, and about 68.2% of the on-court coaching that they televised, it was not in English. The coach did not speak English, or the coach turned off the mic.
Okay.
And when you have that situation where the commentators are frustrated, or you're just sitting there listening to someone talking, Russian or French, and you have no idea what they're saying, it's actually more frustrating, I think, for the fan. Now, of course, the WTA is saying if a coach turns off his mic, like Sam Simic does with Garbiñe Muguruza a lot of the times, then they are going to be penalized. And not only will the player not be allowed to call the coach on for that event anymore, but also the next event. So they are trying to curb that. But to me, I'm a purist. I like to see the player go out there, think for himself. in the case of the WTA herself. And I don't think they really need the coach. And so, as we said, about over a third of the time we don't know what they're saying. Over a third of the time the coach really doesn't say anything that's that relevant, that changes the momentum in the match. And the other third, okay, yeah, you do have some moments. But to me, the risk is not worth the reward.
Yeah, I would happen to think that. I mean, it makes sense what you're saying. I mean, when you're playing and you got all that stress that you're dealing with, I can't imagine in any it's like a no-win situation for the player. You can't win in that situation when they're listening to what you might be saying, because I mean, what, every once in a while, maybe every once in a blue moon, you might say something funny. Other than that, I mean, you're right. I mean, sooner or later, once in a while, you're going to be agitated, and that's not going to come off looking good, and that's not right. I mean, like you said, everybody in your own work environment, even. I mean, does anybody want to see a mic pushed in your face when you're at your most stressful part of the day in your work environment? What are you going to tell me, that all the time that you're not going to come out and say something that you don't want people to hear?
And they're not supposed to hear, by the way. I mean, can you imagine having a mic when you see your attorney, your doctor, your contractor, your business associates in a private meeting? I mean, there's nothing different. This is the office. The court is their office, and to me, there is no place for a mic in that regard.
Yeah.
And also, as we mentioned, again, when you have 68% of the time they're not even speaking English, so you don't even know what they're saying, you lose the value. And then another 25% where really it either has no effect or a bad effect on the player. There's nothing worse than seeing a coach go out there and the player not win another game. That to me is the worst.
Maybe what they should do is have, I mean, maybe put it, use it, but only don't do it live during the actual moment. Like maybe say, in between sets or something, or in between, a break, and instead of you have filler time, use that time to have the producer listen in on what they're saying, and then pick one or two circumstances that actually sound okay. Okay.
But these producers, they want the juiciest part of the whole conversation. They want the tears. They want the anger. They want all the good. That's what they are actually looking for, is the stuff you don't want to show. I remember Lindsay Davenport saying on one exchange she was watching, she goes, "This is just something we should not be a part of. This is not our business." And I agreed with her on that. Although let me tell you, she does a very good job with Madison. She probably is one of the best at it. But so that's my that's just a personal player perspective on the on-court coaching. I will say I did like what they did at the Next Gen event on the ATP tour, where they put mics or headphones on the coach who was in the stands and headphones on the player who was on court. To me, that was a better balance. When you have the coach right on top of the player, like you had Simic on top of Muguruza, or some of these guys out there, to me it was uncomfortable. And I thought that type of distance allowed us to hear the conversation in a more balanced way, where people had their emotions somewhat in check and they could keep control of the situation. When you have the two people out there and they lose control, to me that was the worst.
All right, and by the way, Sandrine from Switzerland was one that wanted to know about what you thought about the court coaching. So let's go to Chris in Los Angeles. The final question: what does Jack Sock need to do to win a slam, and can Robert Lansdorp help him?
Robert Lansdorp. Do you know he is all over Facebook? Robert Lansdorp, and let me tell you, I had the great fortune to work with him one year. He is phenomenal. He is one of the greatest coaches that you'll ever know. He, of course, has produced 4 number ones in Lindsay Davenport, Maria Sharapova, Tracy Austin, and Pete Sampras. Worked with Pete as well. And now, of course, he's still out there. He was just working with Justin Gimelstob's son, Brandon, and I could see the intensity in the form in Brandon, young Brandon, who's just starting. So it's so great to see Robert Lansdorp still working with kids, still giving back to the game. Don't think he's gotten the credit he deserves. We've seen some coaches, including Balotelli, get into the Hall of Fame. A lot of them have gotten their due. He is one. Of course, he's a prickly guy. If you know Robert Lansdorp, I remember the first time I went out there to work with him, I was given a little bit of a forewarning, but he was very, very definite about the girls having to wear appropriate attire and match attire. You had to have a skirt, a top, the match, outfit to go out there and practice with him, because he wanted you to approach the practice like you would a match. I got it. Well, almost. It's a period of flash dance, so we ripped our shirts a little ways. Well, he didn't like it, and he just ripped that shirt off me, Greg. It was like, boom, thank goodness I had a bathing suit on underneath. But the bottom line is that, yes, he was a little bit unorthodox and a little bit gruff at times, and he was a tough character, and is. But he also had a heart of gold. He has a huge, huge heart, and he's so smart. And I hope he does get the due he deserves. I would love to see what he would do with Jack Sock, because Jack is at this point in the top 10, number 8 in the world, phenomenal end to the year, phenomenal beginning. But he does have some curly cues in his game, a few little technical issues. I would love to know what Robert would do about that, or maybe not. Because Robert has a good sense about people, and he knows how to push their buttons and how much to push them or not to push them. And I would be interested to see what he would say about Jack Sock. Obviously, Jack is working with Jay Berger. They've had a great end of the year, so that will continue. But, it's always nice to hear a few words of wisdom from some of the great mentors of the game like Robert Lansdorp.
All right, so that is going to...
Hopefully Hall of Famer one day, Robert Lansdorp.
Okay. Your vote's in.
My vote's in.
All right, Andrea. So we'll talk to you next time when we have. Can't wait. We've got our 2017 Aces Awards show. So that's
time just flies.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for so long. It's finally here. So we're gonna. We did it last year. So I'm sure we're gonna improve upon it even more. We'll have a special guest.
We didn't even get to Nadal's stem cell treatment that he had in 2015. We'll get to that another time. It's so interesting to read the story.
All right. So Andrea,
thanks. Back. Yeah, his injuries.
Yeah, I'm sure he could write a book about it.
I'm sure he will.
Andrea, I'll talk to you next time for the award show.
Look forward to it.
All right, so that's Andrea Leand, and that'll wrap it up. By the way, don't forget if you like to have Andrea answer your questions, go to Andrea's Facebook page, and she'll pick out some good ones, some good questions, and we'll talk about it and have her answer them on the show. All right, so that'll do it for the show. Again, Aces Award show coming up next, and a couple weeks after that is our 2018 season preview special. Don't forget that. So those are our last two shows for 2017 here on the Prime Sports Tennis Show with Andrea Leand on the Prime Sports Radio Network. So thanks for tuning in once again. Don't forget, you can check out our shows on our website at primesportsnetwork.com or on our iTunes and YouTube pages under Prime Sports Network. Thanks again for tuning in to Prime Sports Tennis with Andrea Leand. We'll see you next time.